And for more on this, let's bring out our guest, New York Congressman Gregory Meeks, senior member of the House Financial Services and Foreign Affairs Committees. Congressman, thanks for giving us some time today. I appreciate it.
Good being with you, Rich.
Okay. Before we even get to what we do about it, from your perspective, how bad have things gotten in Iraq, and are they going to get worse before they get better? Could Baghdad really be imperiled here with these Sunni insurgents?
But yeah, I mean, we have a very bad situation. There's no question in regards to that with ISIS and what has taken place. I think that there's less likelihood for Baghdad to immediately fall as it is with reference to some of the other cities that have fallen, simply because what we have is sectarian violence here. The other cities that have fallen already are primarily Sunni nations, Sunni cities rather, and this is Sunnis against Shiites. And so a lot of those individuals were not up to fighting in that regards, whereas when you get to Baghdad, it's majority Shiites that are there, and I think they'll put up a greater fight to protect Baghdad, but all in all, it's not a good situation.
In terms of your broader concern, and you know this part of the world better than almost anybody, is this not just what happens with Iraq, but the implications for Syria and the broader area as well? Before we even get to what we do about it, what's your biggest worry about this, even beyond Baghdad?
Well, you know what? You touched on it, Rich. This has to be dealt with the region in mind. We've acted thus far with forgetting about the region, forgetting about the century-old dispute between the Shiites and the Sunnis, forgetting about the other countries that are surrounding that are affected. We've got to try to adapt this or resolve this in a diplomatic way that brings in the entire region so that we don't look like we're siding with one side or the other. If you go in simply just to bomb, as it is, then it could appear as though we're just going against the Sunnis and on the side of the Shiites. And if you do nothing, then you could appear as though you're on the side of the Sunnis and against the Shiites. So we've got to figure out how we do this in a multilateral way, and that means that there's got to be conversations and other nations brought to the table, like we are having conversations now with Iraq. But we also need, when you talk about the P5, conversations with Iran, I should say. And when we talk about the P5+1, that's important because other large nations like us have a stake in it also, like Russia and like China, but also like Turkey, who's right there, and they would have a number of refugees going over to their side of the boundaries. Plus, Turkey's an Islamic state with Sunnis and Shiites also. So it's a complicated issue, and not as simple as some of my Republican colleagues want to make it seem, where you just go in there and drop a bomb. We did the wrong thing from the beginning. When we had George Bush saying mission accomplished, did not take into consideration any of the facts on the ground and the history of the country, and disbarring everybody that was on part of the Ba'ath party, as well as dismantling the entire army. And so some of that is coming back to bite us. So we've got to make sure, as the president is doing, that we think about what we do, how effective it will be, not only for the short term, but for the long term also.
You mentioned some folks on the right. I got to tell you, very little surprises me anymore. But I've had folks around my table at night and other folks in D.C. who say, man, has this president, meaning Barack Obama, really screwed up Iraq? And I'm doing a double take saying, wait a minute. How exactly we get into the first place here, and how is it the president's fault about the country disintegrating before our eyes? I know you made some headlines yourself here when talking about some of the comments that Senator McCain had to say, but it seems that there's a lot of revisionist history going on here, isn't there?
You got that right. Look, it was George W. Bush who went into Iraq, number one, without any cause. There was no weapons of mass destruction, nor was there any connection to 9/11. So we went in and we blew up that whole scenario. And remember, at that time, the same ideologues who was trying to blame this on Barack Obama said it would cost no dollars, no American dollars, and very few American lives. Some 4,500 lives later, some trillions of dollars later, we are still haunted by that decision. Not only that, those same individuals are the ones that dismantled completely the whole government of Iraq when they should not have. And what Barack Obama has tried to do is to try to, because it's what he inherited, is to make sure that there was a government that was divided or had equal implementation from the Sunnis and the Shiites. But remember, it was the Bush administration that put Maliki into power in the first instance. And Maliki has gone in and he has done just the opposite, or the same thing really, what Saddam Hussein was doing, except now he's doing it and did it to Sunnis, which caused them to be alienated from the government and caused the kind of sectarian fight that we have right now. Not Barack Obama's doing. And then Barack Obama tried to negotiate to leave some of the American troops in Iraq. But it was Maliki who said, no troops. America has to leave, have to get out. So where Barack Obama has blame in this, I have no idea. But those folks who are gung-ho about war every place, they're the ones that put us in this predicament, and now they're trying to hide and try to blame the Obama administration when he's just inherited the mess that they created.
You know, Congressman, I remember in the 2008 campaign in the Democratic primary when then Senator Biden said, hey, listen, let's just split the country into three parts here. The Sunni Shiites and Kurds, they've been fighting for centuries here. It's going to always be this way. Obviously, he lost, and that wasn't our policy. But do you sense there's almost an inevitability here that this thing is going to be broken up, this country, into sectarian pieces, and maybe the sooner we just acknowledge that reality, the better off we are?
Well, you know what? I'm not giving up hope yet. You would hope that there could be a unified government between the Sunnis and the Shiites and the Kurds, and they could figure it out and coexist in a unified nation. I think that possibility had existed if Maliki had done the right thing when he became the prime minister. And my hope is that still, diplomacy is still at work, and it's not an easy thing. Diplomacy is always hard. You're taught as a kid, it's easy to strike someone. It's harder to try to talk your way into a resolution. And so I'm not giving up hope yet, but I would also not disagree with you that if things are left the way they currently are standing, it seems as though that is a possibility, because I don't see the Kurds, who now have taken a number of Kurdish cities, of which they wanted all along. And as I've indicated earlier, the Sunnis, where they're the majority, and the Shiites, where they're the majority, that if they can't coexist, that could very well be the outcome. And where the American interest is to send more troops on the ground or do anything, I don't see that right now. The Republicans talk about, as they always have, they try to make Americans fearful for themselves. Well, the individuals that will be more directly affected are those in the neighborhood, not, no real threat to the United States of America. And this president has also shown that if he feels there is a threat, he doesn't have a problem going after you and getting you. So I hope that we're not headed there, Rich, but right now it doesn't look good.
I know the expression, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but Iran, are you comfortable that at this point we should be enlisting the help of the Iranians here when it comes to Iraq? I mean, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Well, I'm comfortable that we need to have dialogue. I think that it's always easier to dialogue with those people that you agree with, but you need to dialogue with those individuals that you don't agree with. And that's why I've been a supporter, for example, when you talk about nuclear weapons with Iran, there's Iran being there with the P5+1 negotiations. It's hard, it's tough, but I think that we have to have that kind of conversation. I think that, Iran does have a role in the region, along with other countries. And so there needs to be, you can't ignore them. That's not the right thing to do. I don't think that there's necessarily any military strategy that you do together, but there's got to be some dialogue to see if there can be some way to have a diplomatic solution that would resolve this issue so that the excavation of military fighting and the travesties and the loss of human lives and the human rights violations. When you look at some of the videos of people just being executed, that has to stop. Those are crimes. And if Iran has to if we have to talk to them to play a role in it, I think that's fine. We need to do that.
Last thing, you mentioned the mass graves we're seeing, the executions in broad daylight. I mean, these guys at ISIS were even too bad for Al-Qaeda. I mean, we're talking about that kind of an outfit. Is it just the tough truth that we as a country have to kind of acknowledge now that the role that we took in the last decade plus here, we just can't do anymore? We don't have both the wherewithal nor the appetite to be the policeman around the globe, especially in the Middle East?
Well, I think that we can't do things individually as an individual nation. Things have to be done in a multilateral way because there's more than one country that's connected and or affected by what's taking place in the world. And generally, I have found that we're more successful when we act in a multilateral way, and as opposed to America go it alone. Because going it alone, you're not going to be successful. You can have what George Bush did. You could come one day and say mission accomplished, but because of the complications and the that evolves around the entire scenario, you know, a week later you're going to have all kinds of issues. So we need to look at things in the 21st century, I think, in multilateral ways, not looking at it as we did maybe 50, 60 years ago, where it's the United States and the United States can go it alone. We need to change on how we do foreign affairs and foreign relations, and we can still be the leaders. We are the leaders, but we should be the leaders in training and bringing people together, letting them know that they're important, and having the kind of dialogue and diplomacy to talk out our differences as opposed to have to fight out our differences.
Good enough. Congressman, I really appreciate a few minutes. Congressman Gregory Meeks.
Good being with you.